Hi, I'm Jarvis.
Hi, I'm Mayuko.
Hi, I'm Charli.
And today we're going to talk about some of our biggest failures. So failure is actually a very important part of success. As you know, Albert Einstein failed his grade school math class and Michael Jordan got cut from his high school basketball team.
Wait, I'm pretty sure those are myths. Wasn't Einstein really good at math?
And Michael Jordan was always good at basketball.
Well, what hope is there for any of us? So I thought it would be fun and illuminating to talk about some of our failures, but more specifically, the failures that have continued to follow us throughout life. Failure is a thing that, unlike success, for some reason, we hold with us, and it can be like a chip on our shoulder, like the things that we didn't get. I almost feel more defined by the stuff that didn't work out for me than the stuff that did. So I've got an embarrassing interview story from Microsoft to tell, but we'll save that for the end. Mayuko.
I'll go first.
I'll go first. That's me. I'm Michael. Always going first.
We're like in an when we were doing our introductions, I was like Sailor Moon. So I guess the chip on my shoulder has been that I didn't get good grades in college. I was very sub-average student in college.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I just didn't do very well. My grades were bad. I did the homework and I felt like I understood stuff, but yeah, my grades didn't show for it. And so I did a lot of other things outside of studying. I did a lot of extracurriculars and was in student orgs and had internships and stuff. And so that thankfully was good for me. I was set up to be okay after graduation. But definitely after graduation, I was always what am I gonna do for the rest of my career? This GPA is gonna follow me forever. I can't ever change it unless maybe I do a master's and I one up my bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And people who did have outstanding grades, they were working at big companies that were really prestigious and working on really cool projects. And so yeah, definitely right after I graduated was when the chip on my shoulder was most heavy.
Yeah.
I was I'm just not meant to do this. I'm always just gonna be subpar engineer too. But there were ways that I would kind of just talk myself out of it too, where I'd be oh, but I had internship experiences where I learned a lot of stuff. I had extracurricular activities so that, I built up my communication and leadership skills, but I think I use them as excuses for a lot of the time
right.
to cover my insecurity of I had shit grades.
But as a result, you became a more well-rounded thing.
Yeah.
A more well-rounded thing. A more well-rounded person.
Yeah.
And I think that's one really interesting thing about failure is that it almost makes you want to do better, and as a result you can overcorrect.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and the fact that even though I knew that my grades were permanent, if anyone checks my grade 30, 40 years from now, that's what sticks.
30, 40 years from now.
Hopefully don't do that.
The year is 2070 and we have finally uncovered Mayuko's transcript. Wow.
Oh gosh.
Wasn't expecting these grades. This tarnishes her reputation forever.
Not that there's hope for everyone out there, but maybe she wasn't as great as
she will be burned from the history books. Because in this narrative, you actually became wildly famous, and when they found out about your GPA, they took you out of history.
Yeah. Invalid.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely do feel I overcorrected, and then slowly, once I realized that I have these skills that are really important to have as a software engineer, the chip on my shoulder slowly faded, but it is still something that it feels so permanent, and I'm always gonna think about it, and every time I fail at anything, at work or in personal life or whatever, I'm always gonna be oh, it's because I had that thing. So it is a thing that's there. I think I'm getting better at managing it and not necessarily making excuses for it, but it is definitely something that I'm okay, this just means that I am going to work twice as hard in other stuff. And it's also school grades aren't everything either. They're not going to dictate who you are as an adult or as a professional.
Yeah.
And that took a while for me to understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that's followed me.
Yeah.
I feel school, it's amazing the impact it can have on you in those formative years and how it can follow you. Mine is from school as well.
Oh yeah.
Shall I go into it?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So mine is that I was a really good student. I was really good at school. I can't remember whose video we talked about this in. Was it mine or yours? But in another one of these.
She just keeps bringing
videos.
it up. It's we get it, Charli. You were really good at school.
I was. Apart from this one project in English class when I failed. It wasn't even a bad mark. It was I did not pass.
Oh, wow.
And I would always pass. So this was my first experience with failing a school project. And it was a creative writing thing. And ever since then, I've just like had it within me. I'm like, no, I'm a bad writer.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way. And I feel like I'm just in the past few years starting to get over it as I'm creating content online and like writing more. But I mean, I'm always like, nope, I can't write. I'm not good at this. Someone else can do that.
Well, because you failed a creative writing class, you are not allowed to be creative legally.
Yeah. Legally.
So the cops are on their way. Yeah. You were actually going to be taking away all of your YouTube videos.
Right. Yep. I mean, isn't it crazy? Like, it sounds so strange when you explain it.
Yeah.
But it's just like it adds to that imposter syndrome inside you. Yeah. This is like over 10 years ago now, like 12 years ago now that this happened as well. So I shouldn't still be thinking about getting a bad mark in English in high school.
But still, it really can follow you around.
Yeah. Like, I think there's just a thing of like the emotional experiences that you have when you fail at something are so strong that they are the things that you remember. I think it's just like that's just like how our brain works in a lot of ways. But whatever chip is on our shoulder are the things that we're always going to think about. So in a way, like because of these failures, we figure out ways to grow and like learn from these failures really well. So in a way, it's a blessing, but it's just like it's such a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah, and that it sucks you have to go through it to get the lesson.
Yeah, and you only feel that way after you're on the other side. You're like, oh, thank God I went through that. But at the time, you're like, this sucks so bad.
I think ultimately, like, failure is a necessary part of progress.
Yeah.
And we learn so much more from failure, probably evolutionarily, because what is there to learn from success? When you were succeeding, you were already good enough to succeed, and when you fail, there might be something that you needed to change. So I can imagine why our brains are wired to hang on to failure. So, ready for my story? I told them my story, and they started crying, so... just wait until you hear it. I mentioned this on a video once, but I left a Microsoft interview, like kind of mid-interview. I had like a really storied history with Microsoft. Like the previous year, this was my sophomore year of college, I did the interview. I flew to Redmond, Washington to interview at the Microsoft headquarters, interviewed with like the Windows Phone team, rest in peace. And like a guy took me out to took me to lunch off site, which was like pretty weird because normally you like eat at the cafeteria at the like location. And I was like, well, this is strange. And then they asked me, what is going to be Windows Phone's hardest problem to solve? And so I was like, well, market penetration perhaps in an industry that is pretty dominated by iOS and Android. And they were like, no, battery life. And I was like, all right. And then we just talked about battery life for a while. And I didn't get the job. But neither did Windows Phone. So that's not the interview that I walked out on. But that was, I'm setting the stage for like my relationship with Microsoft at this point. The next year, I was coming off my Google summer, I was feeling like hot shit. So I was like, jobs are easy. I figured it all out. I've solved the code. I've cracked the code. I've cracked the coding interview. And I did the first round of an interview with Microsoft. They just described this problem. They were like, you have a maze and you have a robot that has no sensors, but it can just tell you if it hit something, and it can go left and it can go right or something like that, right? And they were like, how do you write an algorithm that gets the robot out of the maze? And so I was like thinking about like these really like, I think I was TAing for a data structures and algorithms class. So I was like really feeling like on top of the world. I was like, oh, like, let me think about how I can apply like a graph search or something to this problem. And then they were like, oh no, you can't use any space. That means that you can't like store any extra data. So I couldn't do any of the algorithms that I knew from school. And I was like, I don't know what to do in this situation. And I got really frustrated because I was like trying to think out things, and every time I would put something out there, like, oh, well, that doesn't work because of this, and that doesn't work because of this. And I was like, this doesn't sound like any problem that I've ever heard of. And I got pretty frustrated, and towards the end of the interview, I'm like, I'm sorry, I think I'm done. I don't have it. I'm sorry, goodbye. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, bye, I apologize. Like, I was just like, sorry. And I left, and I was like really upset. I was like, because I got so flustered that I couldn't figure it out. And I thought, at least at that point, so highly of myself, it was only the first round. I'd gone on site the previous year. I was like, I've got this. This is like in the bag. And then I think I went to class after that, and I talked to one of my friends, and they were like, oh, did you know that if you just hug the right wall in mazes, you always find the way out? And I was like, I did not know that. I didn't know that. Is that a thing that people know? And I was like a little bit upset because it didn't feel like it was testing. It felt like a puzzle, right?
It felt like a trick.
It felt like a trick because it was like framed as if I was going to be asked some sort of like programming question or some algorithms question, when it was really like kind of knowing a thing about mazes, and no one's going to like derive that on the spot, right?
That's not common knowledge.
It's not common knowledge. So that is just one thing that like was always a chip on my shoulder. And I think every interview failure I remember more vividly than an interview success. Like I have a document that I keep that's like all of the questions that I was asked on like the interviews that I failed and like how to like what I needed to do to like prepare, because it was like basically my list of failures, my list of shame, you know? But for you people watching this, I think that you should see your failures as an indicator of progress. Like we all carry these things not as failures, but as like things that moved us forward.
Yeah.
And they're not like sort of scars on us that, or scarlet letters that will eventually remove us from the history books.
Yeah, and like with mine too, I think it taught me that it wasn't really anything to do with writing. It was more that sometimes I do have to try harder at things. And like, I'm not just gonna pass every test just because I'm good at tests.
I failed Algebra 1 in 7th grade. That was that experience. I just didn't do any of my homework, and I was like, you have to do your homework sometimes? Man. But I felt dumb at that, because I got to the point of like failing the class. I was like, how did I get here? But then after that, I stopped not doing my work. And that like was a point where things changed for me. I was like, if you complete the work, you probably don't fail the class. Like it's incredible. It was just like a life hack for anybody who's like looking for that. The moral of the story is failure, it sucks in the moment, but it's ultimately like a good thing. It's probably like vegetables in that way. Thank you so much. You guys didn't hear the crickets?
In my mind, I was like, I like vegetables.
Oh, do you like vegetables? There's the door. All right.
Both of us were just like,
All right, so it's been made aware to me that some people like vegetables. So, you know, no pain, no gain. That's a different metaphor. I think that, we can gain a lot from the failures, even though they hurt, like, momentarily. And they're not at all like vegetables. Fine. Thank you so much, Mayuko. Thank you so much, Charli, for joining us. We have 2 other videos that we did on the internet. They're gonna be linked somewhere. And you should check those out on the interwebs, where you are, youtube.com. You know where it is. You've been to the website.
She's stalking now.
It's just this for 20 more minutes. So check those out. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. I feel like Philip DeFranco when I say that. And what else should I do? What else do I do? What else do
Don't
YouTubers
fail.
do?
Or, no, that was the opposite of the moral.
I've taught you nothing. So you failed, which is, now you've learned something. And that's the video. Bye.
Bye.